this workbook through Excel that will actually help with creating some math and determining, what this all looks like in real time, if you will. We actually have some reports that, their Paychex reports, because Paychex is our payroll provider. So we can have some real live reports of what those might look like. And then, of course, we're going to answer your questions. Okay, so the Paycheck Protection Program, we all know that we have 8 weeks to spend the money. And then we have 60 days to get forgiveness for this money. The purpose of the PPP was to keep people employed, keep people off of unemployment and keep people employed. So the notion is that that we would like you to have the same number of employees you had before this happened. And we'll talk about some of the nuances that have come to light with given those facts. The SBA determined that at least 75% of the loan, forgivable loan, needed, to be used for payroll. The remaining can go to rent, utilities, and mortgages. There's been a lot of talk about what's included in utilities, and some people are trying to get very, very creative. And I understand that there are a lot of expenses in addition to this that were fixed in nature that we all had to pay while we were not able to work. But the utilities that are included in the forgiveness are water, electric, gas, internet, and phone. Currently, that's it. There are no other expenses includable. The date that you have to return these funds without any questions asked has been extended once again to May 18th. So if you feel you got too much money, or you got money that you shouldn't have, or the calculation was incorrect, whatever the reason might be, if you return those funds by May 18th, there will be no questions asked whatsoever of you. Okay, a full-time equivalent. So the first half of this slide shows you 3 employees. All 3 of these employees worked in excess of 30 hours per week, so they're all considered a full-time equivalent. Below, we have a table of part-time employees that average various hours. So in order to determine a full-time equivalent, what we would do is we would add the total of all those hours the employees worked, and we would divide that by 30, since 30 hours a week is the determining factor for a full-time equivalent. Okay, so in this particular example, we would have 5 FTEs. Okay.
One thing for this is that if you work in excess of 30 hours, that does not go towards your part-time employees. So once you hit 30 and above, you're considered an FTE, and it doesn't become 1.5 FTEs or 2 FTEs.
Good one, yes. Okay, we're going to talk about the items that are forgivable. So gross wages, this has been talked about for quite some time now. I think we all know that we can only pay people, or we can only use in the forgivable amount wages up to $100,000 per person. Hazard pay. This is pay. Believe it or not, there are some businesses out there that are paying their employees extra to work during this time. So that pay that you're paying those employees is indeed includable in the forgivable amount. Bonuses. We talked about bonuses a little bit, and very often it's common for employers to give out bonuses in the first quarter for the previous year. That is still acceptable, except the bonus has to be allocated to the 8-week period. which was a little different than some of us understood previously. So that's a little, it could be a little bit of a concern if when you calculated your PPP loan, that you included that full bonus amount. Similarly to group healthcare, that's again only includable for forgiveness for the 8-week period. If it's not a perfect match, allocate. As long as you have a basis that makes sense and is reasonable, I believe you'll be okay. Retirement contributions matches for 2020. So there's still some talk in Congress as well as in the Treasury, what is really going to be included here. There's questions, is this 2019 contributions that can use to be forgiven, or is it 2020? Because very often, most of us, most small businesses, do not make our employer retirement contributions until after the year is over. So if they say that this has to be for our PPP period, many of us, this wouldn't qualify because we aren't making those payments during the PPP period. And quite frankly, I'm advising clients to keep their cash. So I wouldn't want clients to use cash to make premature contributions just because the PPP would be forgiven. So stay tuned on that. I'm hoping that the direction for that will change. Employer state taxes. So the taxes that can be included in the forgivable amount are only your state employer paid taxes. So here in Massachusetts, that includes this wonderful new Massachusetts PFML, and there's a few little taxes associated with that. Your state unemployment taxes, and in Massachusetts, we have a healthcare tax. So that would be included as well. Again, Paychex has produced reports that will provide those numbers for you, which is very nice because having to go look for those can be a daunting experience. Okay, here's our little shoebox of facts, and why we say shoebox, because again, for many of us who've been doing this a long time, clients used to deliver their information in a shoebox, and we would have to take it out and disseminate it and do something with it. So we're dealing with a shoebox full of facts here. So we have Jane, she's a sole proprietor, and she runs an art store in Lexington. She received $46,000 from the PPP on April 3rd. Her 8 weeks from that is May 29th. I want to stress this, that it's 8 weeks and not 2 months. Okay, so be sure you're calculating this for 8 weeks. Her rent is $3,000 a month, her utilities are $1,000 a month, and she runs her payroll every 2 weeks on a bi-weekly basis. Then we have Jane makes $2,000 a week, and she has Tarzan, who works 40 hours a week at the art shop, and he makes $25 an hour. Tarzan is also entitled to a performance-based bonus for last year's work, and that bonus is going to be $6,500. We have Carla, who works 30 hours per week, and she makes $15 per hour. So now here's a real payroll report. What this would look like, you know, on your payroll journal, and it's for the pay period April 4th through April 18th, and we have Jane, Tarzan, and Carla. So Jane makes $4,000. That amount is too high, because if we annualize that, Jane's salary is actually $104,000. So we have to max Jane out at 3846.15 in order for us to calculate our forgivable amount. We have Tarzan, who is, he earned $2,000 this pay period, and we're also paying out his bonus. So we're going to allocate that bonus. So we're going to take the 6,500, we're going to divide it by 52, multiply it by our 8 weeks. So $1,000 of that bonus is going to be forgivable. Then we have Kala. She worked 60 hours for us that week. So her amount again is below this $3,846, which is the $100,000 salary cap. So her wages will also be forgivable for this pay period. Then, of course, highlighted below is the Massachusetts taxes that will also be included in our calculation. So let's go back over these facts. So Jane is going to report forgiveness for this pay period as follows. Her wages were the max at $3,846.15. Tarzan, $2,000, $1,000 for Tarzan's bonus, $900 for Kala's wages, and then the Massachusetts unemployment and the Massachusetts employer medical assistance contribution for $402 and $670. Jane is also entitled to report any retirement contributions, the employer provided healthcare expense, and any hazard pay if applicable. What she's not going to report is any wages that are in excess of that $38.46.15 per pay period. Employer FICA payments. So as employers, we all have to contribute to FICA, Social Security, and Medicare. Those taxes are not included in the number. They should not have been included in your PPP loan amount, and therefore they're not included in the forgiveness. And that includes employee tax withholdings. So it's employees' gross wages, which are eligible for forgiveness. Now we're going to jump over to a document that we've sort of prepared that's out there from a lot of CPAs right now, with some mathematical components to it so it can help you determine your forgivable amount. So what we did was we just went down and we entered in all of the payroll, you know, the weekly payroll periods for this is going to be for our 8-week period now. We put in our rent that was paid on April 3rd. We put in our Eversource electric bill, our gas bill, the water bill, any of these, you know, all of these are applicable, forgivable amounts, okay? We've put them into, you know, the appropriate columns here, and down below, we'll show you that our forgivable payroll totaled in column J, $38,011. Our rent was $6,000. Our utilities were $2,000. So down below, this could get a little tricky. If anybody has any questions and wants to, you know, give us a call, we're happy to help you with it. But what we're basically saying is that we spent $38,000 in payroll. We spent $8,000 in overhead, which is in column O. But our applicable overhead amount based on our loan, based on our payroll of $38,000 was $12,670. So if you look at the percentages in column P, that means our payroll was at 83%, which was higher than the 75%. And our overhead was at 17%. So our loan of $46,000 will be completely forgiven. We can't stress enough for you all to work with your payroll providers or us to give you guidance on where to find these numbers. I understand that you all are out there trying to survive and hopefully thrive, and you have a lot on your plates right now, pivoting to do whatever you can to bring money in the door, and this is the least of your concerns. So look to us to help you all with this information, so that you're ready to go. I don't want any of you feeling as though, how am I going to figure this out? How am I going to get this information? We can work together and be sure that you know, this isn't a painful process for you. So again, work with your payroll companies. They might be able to customize reports. Like I said, Paychex is telling us that there'll be a report available for you that you can walk through that will create the information for you from a payroll perspective.
So on this report that we had done, you can see that it's the 8-week period of Carla's PPP loan, or Jane's PPP loan, sorry. And we have that. And then we have her total wages of $16,000, which is for 4 pay periods. We have to limit it to the 3,846 and 15 cents. We have Tarzan's gross wages of $8,000 for 4 periods. We can use his full amount. We have Tarzan's bonus, which we're going to limit to $1,000 for forgiveness. And then we have Carla's hourly wages, which can be used in full. So this $34,100, even though that's what you've paid over the last 8 weeks, is not what will be forgiven or used. We're actually going to do a little bit more of a calculation. We're going to take that 3,846. We're going to multiply that by 4 because it was 4 pay periods, even though it was 8 weeks. We're going to add in the 8,000 for Tarzan. We're going to add in the 1,000 for his bonus, and then we're going to add in 3,600, and then so our gross wages that will be used for forgiveness are $27,985.
Great. So now we come to example number 2. We have the same facts, except that now Jane has received a $60,000 loan, and this loan amount was determined off of the 2019 data, the payroll data for Jane when she had 6 employees. 3 of these employees were furloughed due to COVID and are now, sorry, typo there, and are now refusing to return to work because they're making more from unemployment. I'm sure this is a very familiar response from your employees that you're hearing, and it puts us in a bit of a dilemma for certain. So we're going to go through an example of what this might look like. So we have the pay period again of 4/4 to 4/18. We have Jane at 4,000. She's going to be limited. We have Tarzan, his forgivable wages. You know, we use sort of the same facts here. And then the difference here now is the loan, really the loan forgiveness calculation. So remember, Jane received a loan of $60,000 in this example. And we're going to go down and sort of, you know, we've mapped out all of our expenses that we've paid during the periods that were applicable for our loan forgiveness. And what we'll see down the bottom here is that our loan amount was $60,000. And we actually spent $46,000. 38,000 of that was allowed payroll, and 12,000 of that was allowed for overhead. So the potential unforgiven amount is the $60,000 of our original amount, and then the $46,000 that we actually spent, which give us an unforgivable amount of $14,000. Again, this part is a little bit tricky, and for me, it took me a little bit to grasp. We struggled with coming up with a way for you all to understand this. So again, reach out with any questions. Now, what that unforgivable amount determines is that now you have a loan. You certainly can give the money back. If you choose not to, then you have a 6-month deferment payment period, and then the loan is at 1% for an additional 18 months. So the max loan is for 24 months. There is discussions right now in Congress and with the Treasury that this does not make sense. It does not make sense that employers, especially here in Massachusetts, that are still not allowed to work at full capacity, but have to use these funds. And it's taking away the original idea of where this came from. And so there's discussions about allowing the 8-week period to be flexible. And there's discussions about why should we be penalized if our employees were offered their positions back and they do not want to come back to work. So stay tuned. We will keep you updated on this information as we receive it. So I'm going to let Joe go through example number 3, because I'm sure you're sick of listening to me at this point.
So example number 3 is where we see a bit of change. Jane has moved her small art shop to New York City now. She only received $40,000 in PPP. She still received it on April 3rd, and her 8 weeks are over on May 29th. Now with Jane's move, her rent is no longer $3,000 a month, $7,500 a month, and her utilities are $2,000 a month. Her payroll is still run every 2 weeks, and instead of making $2,000 per week, Jane now only makes $1,000. Tarzan took a pay cut to $20 an hour, working 40 hours a week, and Carla works 20 hours a week at only $10 an hour. We are going to look at our payroll journal just as we have before. You'll see the change now because Jane's payroll is under the 384615. Her entire gross wages are completely forgivable. Tarzan, since he doesn't have a bonus this time, there's going to be no allocation. All of it is going to be forgivable under as it is less than 384615. And the same, Carla's, her wages have always been forgivable. And of course, now these would be New York unemployment and New York health taxes, but just for simplicity's sake, we kind of stuck with Massachusetts rates. So, and now if we open up this tracker, we will see that because Jane has much higher overhead expenses this go around, her actual overhead was closer to almost 50%. So her payroll for the 8-week period was $21,600, but her overhead, her rent and utilities was $19,000. This gives her 53% to payroll and 47% to overhead. Since the minimum of 75% needs to be spent on payroll, the only forgivable portion of her overhead costs is $7,200. This means that her potential unforgiven amount is $11,200. Might come as a shock to Jane, who thought, listen, I spent my $40,000. I spent it on what you told me, but it was just not the right amount. So we wanted to make sure that we showed you all what would happen if you kind of went willy-nilly on the ratios. You didn't follow that as strictly as you should have.
So we're going to turn it over to some questions that you all sent in. So thank you very much for that. What we want to stress is that you want to work with your individual banks that gave you the PPP loan. They are going to be the ones determining your forgiveness. We're giving you the information in the facts as we've seen it and we've interpreted it. Banks, you know, they may have a different interpretation. So if you feel like there's something that doesn't quite make sense, Feel free to reach out to your banks. The ones that we've reached out to thus far say that they have no guidance on forgiveness, and as soon as they do, they'll make it available to their customers. So be sure to check in with them as often as possible. So some of the questions sent in were, what happens if a person earns more than $3,846.15? Do we pay them as we normally would, or do we have to have separate checks? You do not have to have separate checks. I would continue to pay them as you would. Just know that that amount is the maximum amount that you can include for any one person. Employer tax payments are not allowed other than the state employer paid taxes. You offer supplemental insurance. We understand a lot of us do. We have workers' comp, we have all sorts of things, disability insurance, life insurance. These types of insurances are not forgivable under the PPP loan. How should you set your payroll amount for the month? So again, there were a lot of talks that we were saying, okay, we should rearrange our payroll cycles to have as many during that 8-week period as we can. And again, this is creating work and stress for a lot of us, and that was not the intention. So there is a lot of talk about, you know, if our pay period falls out of my 8-week period, but the expenses were incurred during the 8-week period, are they still considered forgiven? Common sense would tell you yes. So again, stay tuned with this. I would say if you're not close to your 8-week period, you still have another month, then keep things as normal as possible. Don't make any unnecessary changes. How do you document your earned wages if you're a sole proprietor with no employees? Well, this is interesting. This is one where you're going to want to reach out to your bank and ask them what they're going to need. We're recommending that, you know, especially during this time, that you keep all of your earned wages in a separate bank account, and you keep all of your expenses, you know, use that same bank account to pay all of your expenses. Because as you know, when you received your PPP loan, the banks were using line 31 from your Schedule C, which is your net profit. It's the amount of money you get to take home after you've paid all of your expenses. So we may have to be preparing interim reports for you all, for all of our clients who are bookkeeping or accounting with us. No need, we have all that information for you in real time, and can produce that for your 8-week period when necessary. Based on what we've heard from Paychex, they are creating a report. It probably won't be automatic, since everybody's 8-week period is going to be different. But there is going to be some sort of wizard, if you will, that will allow you to put in the information so that the report will generate. And I believe that that will be sufficient evidence. It's a third party. Many of us will not have quarterly payroll tax returns that will be out when our forgiveness period is over. So I believe these reports should become sufficient evidence. So we had touched on this one already, which is a very good question. You know, will I be penalized if my employees refuse to return to work? Well, based on the guidance given to us with full-time equivalent employees, the notion was that they all wanted us to be, you know, keep our employees, have the same number of full-time equivalent employees after as we did before the pandemic. So this comes right from the SBA's website. I'm on a call with them and some others each morning, and we discussed this, and you know, this was their guidance currently. So will I be penalized if my employees refuse to return to work? and they say no, that you will not. They're still waiting to issue an interim final rule. By the way, since this has all transpired, Joe reminded me that there have been 9 interim final rules. So quite a bit has changed for sure. So we're hoping that the final rule will specify the exception for borrowers that are having issues with their employees not willing to return to work. So with that said, we have a little bit more time. I understand we went through this information very quickly, and you're going to need some time to think about it a little more closely and come up with some questions. So we're happy to help in any way.
Oh, and one more thing before we get to the questions that have been sent in via the group chat. I just want to let you guys know there has not been any final word of deductibility of expenses paid with your PPP money. We talked to you about that last week, and we told you we'd keep on it. At the present moment, nothing has been finally set in stone, so we will keep our eyes and ears out for that.
Great, yes. So, question, Tarzan's bonus is forgivable even though it was earned in 2019. It was partially forgivable. And the answer to that, the guidance that we've been given is yes, because typically bonuses are only paid once a year in some respects. Some companies may do them quarterly, but for the most part, what we're hearing is bonuses are paid annually. And so even though this is for the 2019 period, they're saying that that would be includable because, you know, this will hopefully all be behind us when the bonus comes around this time next year. At 83% with a max of 75%, how is that possible? So good question. Again, the guidance is telling us that at least 75% of the money needs to be spent on payroll. So if you choose to spend all of your money on payroll, even though there's a lot of conflicting information out there, we're being told that as long as your full-time equivalents have either stayed the same or gone up, then that is a viable, forgivable use of the funds. Rent is counted when paid. It's paid and incurred. So tricky one. If you pay your rent at the end of the month for the next month, and that payment date falls into your 8-week period, that payment would not be forgivable. So what I'm advising clients to do is pay your rent during your 8-week period, which would mean, let's say, for example, in our example that we've used, the loan amount came in on April 3rd. I would recommend paying your April rent on April 3rd instead of when we normally would, which would be at the end of the previous month, so that the landlord would get our rent on time. There's still, again, discussions out there that say, you know, you're really making this difficult for us and making us go through a lot of hoops, which really don't make sense. You know, if I paid my April rent in March, when I always do, why wouldn't those funds be included? So again, stay tuned. You know, we will keep you updated. Is EMAC included in payroll? The employer portion of EMAC is included in payroll. Okay, the SBA provides a safe harbor for PPP loans under $2 million. What we've heard with the $2 million threshold is that any loan that's $2 million or more is going to be audited for certain. The SBA says that they will be auditing every loan over 2 million. Under that, we have not been, advised as to how they'll do that. I'm sure there'll be some sort of way of determining, perhaps random or, some other means of auditing these loans. And so I am requesting, all of clients or who receive funds to keep very, very, very good records, so that you can substantiate the funds used. I hope that answers the question there. I think maybe your question was more about if the loan was less than 2 million, that perhaps it's going to be fully forgiven no matter what. I haven't heard anything to that extent whatsoever. But again, we'll keep you aware of any changes that have come our way. Employer paid benefits such as 401k match is allowed, but it is allowed only for the 8-week period. So, that you can't, if you pay your match in March every year for the previous 12 months, it is not, the whole thing is not included. You have to allocate it. Yeah, so, again, we talk about this full-time equivalent. We're trying to keep our payroll up and our sales are down. How does this really help? It's still unclear. How sales, there's been no guidance whatsoever that says the forgiveness has any correlation to your revenue or lack thereof. Okay, this is a good one. If you are on unemployment right now, you should not be getting PPP. So the purpose of the PPP loan is to keep people off of unemployment. And they have been very, very clear with that from the beginning, which is why a great deal of us are having trouble getting our employees back to work. So I would say, I would reach out to, if that's the case for you, I would reach out to unemployment. The other thing I would caution, everyone out there is if, in fact, you didn't receive a PPP loan, and you're self-employed, you should definitely be going on unemployment. You should definitely take advantage of that. In addition, if you didn't get a PPP loan for whatever reason, there are other benefits in the tax code that could be helpful, and we will be discussing those in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that.
Hey, Melinda, that was my question. Can I just
Sure.
quickly ask a follow-up? So let's say like right now I'm waiting for both unemployment and PPP. Like I'm in a tricky position, right? Because I haven't gotten my PPP. So I'm hedging myself by applying for unemployment. So if I get the PPP, then I'll have to return the unemployment money?
Yes, and you're not, there's a lot of people in your shoes, and I I would have recommended you doing the same thing. So once one comes in for you, you can determine how to act with regards to the difference. Now it's been stressed, and again, the PPP really hasn't been defined, but you can collect unemployment and still work and earn money. You just need to report that money to unemployment. It may affect your benefits or it may not. So, we have clients who've said, well, that doesn't make sense then, because unemployment I can't live off of. So why can't I use the PPP to supplement? Understood. But the guidance is very clear at the moment that says, if you are on unemployment, you can't get PPP.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it. So with a monthly payroll, should the amount be set at 7,692? I would take $100,000 and I would divide it by 12. Is that the amount? Then that's the amount. So that would be the monthly amount for you, and that is the gross amount. It's not the net amount. So your gross amount before any deductions for time and contributions, etc. Yes, David, that is correct. We're just scanning here to make sure we've during the 8-word compute. Okay, there is a reference point.
It's February 15th.
Go ahead, Joe.
I believe that for the FTEs, it's your FTEs as of February 15th. So on February 15th, if you had 5 full-time employees and then you had 5 part-time employees that averaged, say, 15 hours a week, you would have 7 FTEs. So you'd have those 5 full-time plus the 5, that's 15 times 5, that's 75 divided by 30. That gives you 2 FTEs for them.
Yeah, there is a reference point, and there's even, I believe there may even be 2 reference points that we'll address. I'm hoping the FTE goes away, to be quite frank. I think, again, it's unfair, it appears, and that, you know, it's no fault of our own if we're offering people jobs and they don't want to return to work. You know, that puts us in a very difficult situation in a normal environment, let alone in an environment as we're in right now. Can we collect unemployment during the 8 weeks? Can I collect unemployment after the 8 weeks of PPP? I don't see why not. There is nothing in there that says you can never collect unemployment. So if you've, you know, used up your PPP funds, the 8 weeks has come and gone, and you apply for unemployment, as long as you answer the questions truthfully, I don't see an issue with that. You know, some economists are out there saying that, you know, this economic downturn is going to be with us for quite some time. So there's already talks about the feds extending the $600 payment beyond July 25th. So a lot of information out there. Again, I can't stress enough, if you have any questions or you see something that doesn't make sense, please reach out to us. We're happy to clarify. If we don't know the answer, we will certainly get you an answer if there is one to be had. Again, that's it. So we're going to try to do one of these once a week, you know, just to keep you all informed, because I do believe the information is coming out rapidly, and I think there is a tremendous amount of conflicting information out there. So, you know, it's our duty and responsibility to make sure that you have the facts so that you can do what you need to do. Thank you all. If you would like the PowerPoints, right, Joe?
Many of you sent in your emails ahead of time, and I want to say thank you for that. For those of you who did not put your email in the RSVP slot or just wrote in yes, if you could please private message us. If you open up the chat and then instead of saying to everyone, just say to Melinda, and you share your email with us that way, I will be happy to send out the PowerPoint and the tracker to you. And that is it. We'll leave this open for a few minutes afterwards just for you guys to do that. And again, I wouldn't hit, when you see the group chat window, just choose to Melinda Abbott, not everyone in the meeting.
Yes, some of the nuances of these new systems. So thank you all. Okay, till next time.